Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something really fascinating, how stories basically shape what we want, how we see the world.
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful.
And for, well, over a century now, American media has been just incredibly good at this, globally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Think about movies, right? Armageddon, selling that idea of American heroism, or Forrest Gump with its sort of American perseverance narrative.
The social network, too, that image of disruptive innovation.
Exactly, or even just the cool factor of Top Gun. These films and so many others, they weren't just, fun to watch. They were subtly laying down this emotional framework of American ideals.
It really is fascinating how deep that runs. And, when you bring in Joseph Nye's idea of soft power, you can see the direct line, can't you? How the desire created by these stories fueled the global dominance of American brands, American platforms.
Totally. It's clearly more than just having a good product.
Oh, absolutely. It's a story they come wrapped in. That narrative gives brands like Nike, Apple, McDonald's, Instagram, Netflix, Google.
Yeah.
It gives them this extra layer of appeal.
They're tapping into that globally recognized American story. So here's the interesting question then. Europe has this incredibly rich cultural history, right? So why does it sometimes feel like they've sort of handed over the storytelling reins?
That's a great point.
I mean, you look at a show like Emily in Paris, it's a perfect example, isn't it? European setting, European culture, but it's told largely through an American big tech kind of lens.
And that really highlights a crucial shift, how the landscape of cultural influence has changed. It's not just Hollywood anymore.
Right.
Now, American soft power, it flows through these huge digital platforms: Netflix, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Disney Plus, MZM, Max, Meta, Amazon, all of them.
So these platforms are the new conduits.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And they've kind of set up new rules for how stories even reach us. They've built, you could say, two pretty powerful walls.
Okay, let's dig into those. Two walls. What's the first one?
It sounds like just having a great story isn't automatically enough anymore.
That's exactly it. There's been a definite shift towards, well, call it pay to play. Getting attention isn't just about the story's quality or how it resonates organically.
Well,
Now, getting seen often means dealing with ad budgets, bidding on keywords, figuring out all these complex optimization tricks. Attention is, in many ways, brokered. It's bought and sold.
right. So access is mediated by commercial interests.
Uh-huh.
And the second wall, that sounds maybe even more fundamental, this cultural standardization idea driven by algorithms.
Yeah, and this is really interesting. The algorithms, well, they tend to favor content that's easy to consume quickly, often loud, easily repeatable stuff.
Okay.
And this creates what some people are calling a cultural compression machine. Basically, the subtleties of heritage, the historical context, genuine excellence, that can all get kind of flattened.
So it gets squeezed out.
It gets flattened in favor of stuff that just performs well according to the algorithm's metrics. It simplifies things. Wow. So it's not just about whether certain stories get seen, it's fundamentally reshaping what kind of stories get made and pushed out there. And this connects directly to what Mark Habergel is saying, right? His insights are really guiding our chat today.
Absolutely.
He argues, and this is powerful, Europe is not losing desirability because it lacks beauty or culture. It's losing it because it lacks infrastructure, distribution, and narrative sovereignty in the way America has built that over the last century. That just completely reframes it.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because, look at Europe. The cultural capital there is just immense, undeniable. Think about Parisian haute couture, Milanese design flair, the cool aesthetic from Copenhagen.
Gastronomy, hospitality.
Exactly. And the brands: Chanel, Dior, the whole mystique of champagne from Rheims, Lamborghini's icon status, even IKEA's global reach. These all prove Europe's cultural power.
No question. Europe has these incredible, globally admired assets, but, like Aberdell suggests, just having admiration without a modern way to actively share and amplify those stories. It's like, what? Just memory.
It becomes passive. Europe hasn't really built a unified contemporary system to project all that cultural wealth globally in its own voice.
Yeah.
And that's where the U.S. is different, isn't it? They consciously built Hollywood and now these huge streaming giants, specifically as ways to export their worldview. European efforts, all often brilliant, tend to be more fragmented.
Smaller scale.
Smaller scale, yeah, and they struggle to get that same kind of global reach or lasting impact compared to the American giants. They kind of get lost in the noise.
Which brings us back to Abergel saying, essentially, France and Europe have the stories. What it needs is the stage.
Exactly. A modern, sovereign system of narrative deployment designed not for mass, but for meaning. Not for bland content, but for culture. That's the core idea.
So if Europe doesn't build this stage, what happens? What are the actual risks? What could they lose?
Well, there are a few big ones. First, you could see an erosion of pricing power and differentiation, especially for luxury goods.
Yeah.
So much of their value is tied up in the story, the heritage, the meaning.
Right, the aura.
Precisely. If those stories get diluted, or if they're told mainly through external platforms that flatten everything, that emotional connection weakens. And if that happens, the justification for that premium price starts to wear thin.
So a Dior bag just becomes another image in the feed, losing its distinctiveness?
It risks that, yes. If it looks indistinguishable from everything else scrolling past, then the second major risk is this growing dependence on big tech gatekeepers.
The platforms themselves.
Exactly. Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Netflix. They have immense power to shape cultural trends now. Their algorithms decide what gets seen, what formats do well, what the global audience experiences.
And their priorities might not align with preserving cultural nuance.
Probably not. They're generally driven by scale, broad appeal, engagement metrics. Subtlety, historical depth, the stuff that often defines European culture might not fit those parameters easily. So European brands, creators, they might feel forced to adapt in ways that dilute their identity, or they just risk getting ignored.
And that leads to the third point, doesn't it? This broader erosion of Europe's cultural authority, its soft power.
Yeah, absolutely. If Europe doesn't have its own strong platform to tell its own stories, it ends up essentially renting attention from these foreign platforms.
Renting attention. That's a good way to put it.
And over time, if Europe isn't confidently putting its own narrative out there, its position as a global tastemaker, a source of cultural leadership, could genuinely be undermined. The world might just start looking elsewhere for that inspiration.
Okay, so given these risks, what's the actual proposed solution? How does Europe reclaim that narrative, that cultural sovereignty?
Well, Abergale's argument is that Europe needs a completely different approach. Not trying to beat Silicon Valley at its own game, but creating its own distinct ecosystem.
Something different.
Yes, a curated space. One that's designed to elevate European cultural heritage, not just turn it into mass market content. The goal isn't another TikTok or Netflix clone. It's about building a platform where the deep stories, the real value of European culture, can shine.
Right, so this curated European platform for cultural storytelling, what would that actually look like? What kind of content are we talking about?
Imagine a dedicated online space, really high quality. Think films, series, maybe deep dive master classes, beautiful documentaries exploring the history, the craft, the people, the places behind Europe's cultural icons.
Okay, give me an example.
Like a stunning cinematic portrait of a historic vineyard in Bordeaux, or a compelling drama about, say, the life of Jean Lanvin, or maybe exclusive behind-the-scenes access into the world of haute couture workshops.
Stuff with depth.
Exactly. Content that teaches, seduces, and actually lasts. Not just disposable clips. The focus would be on captivating global audiences with substance.
So it's a conscious shift away from the fast, fleeting content model.
Yeah.
And a key part of this is fostering a direct connection to global audiences, right?
Yeah.
How would that work differently?
The core idea is to build a direct bridge, bypassing the algorithmic filters, the constant advertising noise that you get on most platforms now.
Okay. Less clutter.
Less clutter, more direct engagement. This allows for a more intimate, meaningful connection. It's about fostering a sense of belonging, of aspiration, specifically around what makes European culture unique. It could function almost like a modern tool of diplomacy.
Diplomacy. How so?
By projecting those values, refinement, elegance, excellence, it becomes an infrastructure of desire, of culture, of soft power, as Abergale puts it, operating outside the usual filters of international trade or foreign media interpretation.
It really sounds like the argument is that this isn't just about preserving culture anymore. It's strategic. It's about actively shaping global perception in a world driven by narrative.
Absolutely. Yeah. Today, storytelling is strategy. And the platforms, they're the new arenas of influence. America understood this long ago.
Yeah.
So for Europe to really hold its own, to leverage its incredible cultural wealth, it needs to invest in building an infrastructure that actually honors that heritage, celebrates its excellence, and reclaims its power through its own voice. Authentic European storytelling.
It really does boil down to that question of will, doesn't it? Whether Europe decides to truly act like the cultural superpower it potentially is.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
As Abergale puts it so well, the real question is no longer can Europe act like a cultural superpower. It's whether it will have the courage to do so.
So to wrap up this deep dive, Mark Abergel's core argument is pretty clear. Europe has this immense cultural wealth, unmatched in many ways. But to project its influence effectively, to regain control of its global story, it needs to build its own dedicated infrastructure for storytelling.
Hmm.
Doing that would be a major shift, potentially changing the global balance of cultural power, offering a real alternative to the current dominance of American big tech in shaping how we all see and understand culture.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Thinking about this idea, this potential European platform, what specific parts of European culture and heritage do you think are most important to share globally? And in your mind, what would make such a platform truly successful, truly impactful? It's worth considering the implications for cultural exchange and influence worldwide.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for exploring this with us on the deep dive. We'll talk again soon.